Kiksha, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite movies, and I'm reviewing a lot of classic movies and animes lately. Not really a lot, but recently I've just reviewed Memento, and yesterday I just reviewed Death Note, and now I'm going to do a movie review on Shichinin no Samurai, or Seven Samurai, movie released in 1954. And yeah, one of the reasons why I wanted to watch Seven Samurai is because at around April I started learning more and more about the films of Kurosawa Akira, who is one of the most influential and important directors of all times. And he has made tons of classic movies, like, of course, Seven Samurai. We have Ran, Kagemusha, Yojimbo, Ikiru, Sanjuro. We have High and Low. We have The Bat Sleep Well. We have The Hidden Fortress. We have Throne of Blood. And there are still probably like 20 something Kurosawa Akira films that I haven't mentioned. His filmography is one of the most impressive filmographies of all times, and a lot of great filmmakers nowadays like Martin Scorsese, Christopher Nolan, Quentin Tarantino still look up to Kurosawa Akira as one of the most important figures in filmmaking history. And also, Kurosawa Akira is one of the 4 favorite directors of my old Chinese teacher, so gotta check this one out. But I was thinking, okay, where should I start? Where should I start with Kurosawa Akira films? Of course, you start with the most popular, the most talked about, the most accessible, the most epic Seven Samurai. And wow, this thing is an epic. It is 3.5 hours long. It is 1954, so it's completely in black and white. But it is actually fantastic. And I don't think I've ever given a movie released before 1970 a score, a perfect score. So, this may be it. This movie is written and directed by Kurosawa Akira and also co-written by Hashimoto Shinobu and Oguni Hideo, and it stars Mifune Toshiro, who is an actor who frequently collaborated with Kurosawa, and also Shimura Takashi, and also a bunch of others. And Seven Samurai is a legendary movie, so much so that Sergio Leone would go on to make The Magnificent Seven, which is a Western adaptation of this movie, and then Quentin Tarantino, not too long ago, would make a remake of The Magnificent Seven by Sergio Leone, which is a Western adaptation of this one, which again goes to show how important this movie is. Now, not only that, this movie is, by the time this movie came out, the most expensive film that ever came out of Japan, and also the second highest grossing film. So it's really successful. It has a lot of high praise. It's extremely talked about. Even if you're not a cinephile, you must have at least heard about this movie. And it's actually a great movie. So the plot of this movie is essentially a village is being attacked by bandits. Every time they have harvest, a bunch of bandits basically raid them, steal their food, and steal their women. And this village is dying, and they need help desperately. So they decided to hire 7 samurai to protect them from these bandits. And this is basically the movie. And also, since this movie is 3.5 hours long, there is actually a 5-minute intermission in the middle of this movie, which is there's something about this 5-minute intermission that makes this movie ascend to almost another level of epicness, where it's almost like we're watching an epic theater play, and we need 5 minutes to just digest what happened in the first half so that we can continue on with the second half. Now, that being said though, I didn't expect anything before watching Seven Samurai, I'm like, I mean, yeah, let's go watch it. And surely this movie is not fast-paced at all. This movie is rather mid-paced. There is a lot of talking, there's a lot of other action stuff, but not a single scene in this movie I would consider filler. Every single scene is necessary. The story of Seven Samurai dives into topics that are way more realistic and way deeper than simply a war or a battle, where we have lots and lots of training and planning, lots and lots of thinking and organization before the actual battle begins. And I just really love that. A lot of war movies just skip those parts and jump right into battle, when in fact the most important part about a battle isn't actually the battle itself, but the planning. The planning is the most important part in a battle. And even before all these incidents begin, even before the battle, there are also a lot of scenes that I find really interesting, especially the introduction for the character of Kanbei, where he was in another village, and one of the boys in that village was kidnapped by a thief. And so Kanbei showed up, and he shaved his head and asked for 2 rice balls. And what he did was he basically threw the 2 rice balls into the house that the thief was hiding in and distract the thief, rush inside, and then rescue the boy. And that was so well directed, because you don't know what the hell is going on until at the very end, and it's just so interesting as well. And then we also have the duel scene not too long after that, which is equally as astonishing. And surprisingly, the first half of this movie is also kind of upbeat, where essentially the villagers are very desperate, they were very helpless and sad, but they managed to find one trustworthy samurai who can help and hire 6 other samurai. And this whole hiring process, where we see them making friends, bonding with one another, is really upbeat. It's really uplifting, especially where one of the characters say, man, we meet friends in the least expected of places, and it's just like, damn, I want to make friends too. The rest of the first half of Seven Samurai sees these samurais arrive at the village and start training the villagers and the farmers and start the planning. They go around, they scout around the village and see what are the most advantageous, I don't know if that's a word or not, and see what are some of the best spots for battle, and start thinking, okay, we're going to set the fences here, we're going to create a death trap here, we're going to fill this entire spot with water and trap some of our enemies here, and this and that and this and that. And all at the same time we see training, where the samurais try to train the people, get them to hold spears, gather resources, armor. And there were a couple of moments where raw emotions come out, like when Kikucho, who is played by Mifune Toshiro, Kikucho is not like the other 6 samurai, because he isn't actually really a samurai, or at least he proclaims himself to be a samurai, but he's actually just a farmer boy. And he's really rude, he's very impulsive, he's very playful, he jumps around, and he is no samurai material. He gets drunk, he's very excited, and he doesn't think, he's selfish, but he's also one of the most important characters in the story, where in one of the moments we see him show his human side when he rants about how a lot of farmers in Japan had their lives ruined because samurais had to use their farms, steal their food, steal their women in order for them to go to war. And it just goes to show that he is actually not a samurai, but a farmer boy. There's also one scene in the second part where he saves a baby and he actually cries, and he's like, this is me. This is me. And that was a very powerful moment. There were also a couple other powerful and almost deep moments in this movie, like in the first half when Kanbei basically described how a young man would have dreams of becoming a successful samurai, getting a castle, marrying, a successful marriage. But after dreaming all this, you already have gray hair and you're already old and alone. And then there's also another scene in the second half which is also very powerful. We also see the tension between the villagers and the samurai, since the villagers usually don't trust samurais because, again, samurais usually just steal their food, steal their women, go away, and ruin their lives. So in order to establish a trust between the villagers and the samurai, a lot of things had to happen. There is a lot of bonding, and it's wholesome and upbeat until the second half where shit goes down, when the battle actually begins. And I know that I'm not an expert in warcraft, or anything like that. And I don't think a lot of people nowadays are experts in war, to be honest. But I feel like I learned so much more about war in this movie than in many other TV shows and movies. Because, and again, even though this movie isn't like some war epic between two countries or anything, it's basically a village, 7 samurais versus 40 bandits. But by looking at the planning and the time management and the resource allocation, the whole process unfold, I actually learned a lot. Like, oh wow, planning is really, really important. And also how they fortified the village. They basically surrounded the entire village with fences except for one spot. And the plan is to lure their enemies into that one spot, which gives a disadvantage to the enemies but an environmental advantage to the villagers. And that's only one of the very important things you have to do if you want to fortify a place and defend a place, basically. And also, the truth about war is that it isn't some extremely intense, fast-paced, non-stop fighting. War is actually really long and grueling and tiring. And when people fight wars, it's not really a battle between how many kills which sides have, but it's more of a game of exhaustion. Like, when there's a war, whichever side gets tired faster and surrenders faster, then that side loses. So it's more of a game of tiring each other out. So this battle between the villagers and the bandits pretty much lasted for over 3 days, and we see these bandits come and they're like, oh my god, retreat, and then they come again, and then they're like, oh my god, retreat, and then they come again, and then they're like, oh my god, retreat. And a lot of things happen. Circumstances, situations change every single time, and with each time there are also a lot of character death scenes. Kurosawa Akira is not afraid to kill off people when he has to. There are actually a lot of important characters getting killed in this movie, and each one of them holds a certain impact and power, and they're all really sad. And again, when the battle is actually over and people are celebrating, you can still feel the bittersweetness because you know that a lot of people have died and a lot of people's lives are gone, ruined, because they decided to fight this battle. You know, maybe if they just give their rice away and surrender, maybe none of those people would have died. But in order to fight the bandits, they have to sacrifice lives, and that's the sad part about it. And yeah, again, if you're not into watching movies and you only care about watching entertaining, fast-paced blockbusters, maybe this is not for you, because this is more patience testing. But still, that being said, this is a masterpiece. Also, another thing I have to say about this movie is the cinematography. It's actually amazing. Almost every single shot in this movie looks like a painting. And even though it's black and white, and it has that, I think, 4:3 aspect ratio, or maybe a little bit wider. I don't know. I think it's 4:3. Even so, there are so many beautiful shots, and the way Kurosawa controls the camera, the way the camera pans left, pans right, booms up, booms down, trucks left, trucks right, all of these movements are so elegant and stable and pristine, and it just perfectly captures. The composition of the frame is ingenious, and the use of lighting is amazing as well. A lot of these shots look very contrasty, which is really nice. And the music is also really good. There's a lot of very great usage of music, and when silence is necessary, there is silence, especially in the second half. You'd normally think that the most intense parts of the movie has more music, but that's not true. The most intense parts of this movie is completely silent, like non-diegetic sound-wise, and it just brings out the power. Also, the opening sequence is amazing. The opening credits, it's amazing. It's black screen, white words, and banging drums, and it lasted for about 3 minutes, but it just hypes you up so much. And yeah, I guess I'm just gonna leave it at that. The sound is also really good. There's a lot of movies in the 90s in Hong Kong and some Italian movies which have terrible sound because they're all dubbed and it just sounds super fake. But a movie made in the 1950s in Japan have such good sound. And the acting is great, the characters are likable, and it's a very memorable movie, and it is such cinematic experience. And I guess I'm just gonna leave it at that. This has got to be one of the greatest movies I've ever watched. It didn't blow my mind or anything, but I'm impressed. I'm truly impressed with this movie, and it's fantastic. So yeah, Kurosawa Akira with七人の侍is a 10 out of 10. Have you watched Seven Samurai? From 1 to 10, I'm just rate it, like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. From this point on, because I really want to watch more Kurosawa films, at the end of every month, I will watch and review a Kurosawa film. So by the end of June, I would like to watch and review Rashomon. So look forward to that if you're a huge Kurosawa fan. And if you're not here for the movies, I'm going to review Black Midi tomorrow. So that's cool.